This next speaker, I am really privileged to introduce Bethany Pace to all of you. Kelly's one of her beautiful daughters. But Bethany came to us and is one of those team members that has a story within Resolute. She came in and has served on multiple functions throughout Resolute. But I remember, if I go back in history, many people would say to me over the years, as far as doctors are concerned, they would say to me, you know what I need in my life? I need a Diane, right? That was it. And going back and thinking about that, Dr. Sindel, Coastal, he used to say that to me all the time. He's like, my life would be better if I just had a Diane. I might steal her from you. But we got to the point where Dr. Dibner was at the point in her career, in the number of patients that she was seeing, the amount of revenue that she was responsible for, and the complexity of her cases, that it became clear that we were limited unless we found a treatment coordinator equivalent to Diane. And what were we going to do? Because we've tried to duplicate Diane many times over the years. But there was this person in our organization that carried certain skill sets that had nothing to do with understanding clinical dentistry, but possessed the growth mindset and the intellect to adapt. And we had a hunch that this person could bring all of her skill sets and learn the position and support Dr. Dibner. And we were not wrong. Bethany has made an enormous impact. And you're gonna get a taste of what's inside this courageous woman here in just a moment. But she is kicking it on all cylinders, and it's my pleasure to introduce Bethany.
When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? Think about it. Go back to the moment when you first decided. What was it, and why? I wanted to be a teacher. I remember playing school as young as 3 years old when my big brother went off to kindergarten. I set up a desk on a little step stool and a piece of paper taped to the wall like a chalkboard. I imagined what it would be like to teach the alphabet to bright-eyed kids with their oversized backpacks, pencils in hand, creativity spanning as far as I could imagine. When I started school myself, I had a late birthday, so I had some struggles academically and socially. But I also had some incredible teachers that inspired me to try my best. The teachers who were considered the strictest were often my favorite, mainly because they challenged me and pushed me out of my comfort zone, but also knew when to meet me with compassion. I made the formal decision to become a teacher when applying for college. I based the trajectory of my life on two things: wanting to inspire others and have an impact on their lives, and a career that aligned with someday starting a family of my own. More importantly than becoming a teacher, I wanted to become a mom. I had mapped out my plan, like Dr. Mastroda: go to college, advance myself with a master's degree, get married, raise kids, and live happily ever after. The hours would allow me to do the things that I love in my spare time, like experimenting with new recipes to create delicious meals. In the summers, I could plant a garden that would supply nourishment to those recipes. And I could spend the weekends hiking in preparation to hike the big mountains on school vacations. I felt that the things that I loved to do aligned seamlessly with the teacher identity. I set off on my journey to become the best teacher that I could be. I worked hard for my degrees, gained experience while immersed in the school system, and I met so many wonderful teachers as passionate and like-minded as myself. I got my teaching license first in Connecticut and then in Massachusetts, where I moved to find new opportunities. And I continued to read up on education journals and policies even after graduation. And finally, I landed that fourth grade position that I always wanted. All done, right? No. Now, your master's degree doesn't really advance you much further than the next teacher candidate, so, they have them all these days. Plus, there's a new course that you need to take for your licensure. We got to stay up with the times, right? Standards have been updated. Here's a new curriculum. I know you just got used to the old one, but, Now you need to incorporate social emotional learning into your routine. You need to be more supportive of it. Here's another course you can take. There are too many different classroom management styles, and they're not really working, so we're going to take a school-wide workshop for 5 days in responsive classrooms so that we're all on the same page. Test scores are low. You've got to step it up or we're going to lose funding. Guess what? Cursive is in again. You get to sprinkle that in your lessons. It only takes about 5 minutes a day. You'll be fine. Surprise, classroom observation. At the feedback meeting, why is your class so disruptive? Aren't you practicing the new classroom management techniques we went over? You have a teacher's aide. You should have been able to rein them in at this point in the year. The checks on my to-do list slipped further and further out of my reach. I was contracted to work 7:30 to 3, plus 2 school-sponsored events in a year. But in reality, I was working over 50 hours a week and a weekend event at least every month. I couldn't get anything done during school hours, and even if I managed to make it home before 5:30, I still had to take things home with me to grade or plan for the next day's lessons. If I got sick, I'd have to spend 2 to 3 hours making substitute plans before I could even consider calling out. And even then, I often went in sick because it was easier than to push through than to come back to a mess. I could never turn my work brain off. And I started second-guessing myself more and more frequently. Did I grade those papers objectively enough? I think I was a little harsh, but testing starts next week. I need to set realistic expectations. What was the deal with Josie's outbursts in science? Was I too easy on her? I hope it doesn't happen again. How am I going to get through to Ellie with her multiplication tables? What if she fails another test? Is her father going to come chew me out like he did at conferences last time? I think Aiden forgot a snack again. This is happening a lot. I hope he has enough to eat at home. Either way, add pretzels to the shopping list. Why isn't this year any easier? All right, so I knew things wouldn't be perfect in life, and there would be hard days, but the adversity became insurmountable. I was in a constant state of stress. What was wrong with me? I just need to make it to the end of the year. Then I can look at another school. But then again, all my teacher friends in other schools are just as stressed out. Oh, I know, I didn't get to finish lunch today because I had to run off to recess duty. I'm just tired and hangry. I'll have another cup of coffee and I'll be fine. I tried doing the things that usually made me happy, but the measurements in cooking just reminded me of the fractions lesson I'd have to teach next week. I couldn't fathom continuing the garden that I started, and my plants were all dead anyway. And the hiking just gave me time to ruminate about the new initiatives that were being proposed in last week's staff meeting. After a particularly demanding day, I had an epiphany that left me in shambles. I decided that my husband, who I was dating at the time, he and I shouldn't have a family of our own. I wasn't ever going to have the energy for it. How could I come home from this hell every day and still have the energy to care for a child of my own with the same love and devotion that they deserve from their mother? Would he still want to marry me? This was our dream. We had been planning to have a family since we started dating. I spent the evening thinking about how I was going to tell my husband. And when I delivered the news, he just looked at me incredulously. He was quiet for a while and then looked at me and said, "I think it's time to leave teaching." Leave teaching? Leave teaching? I can't. This is who I am. This is what I've worked so hard for all of these years. I had become a teacher. It was my whole entire identity. But I had completely lost who I was outside of my job. I had gone as far as to give up my dream of starting a family because I was so consumed with my career. And for what? It was not the money. I'll tell you that. leave teaching. What else would I do? Who would want to hire a washed-up teacher? Those who can't teach. And I couldn't even do that. I was stuck, unequipped to hit the trail forward, unable to go backward, and too afraid to blaze a trail in another direction. We had that conversation 2 years before I left, but I knew that he was right. Eventually, I would have to do it. I'd have to leave. Why did I even become a teacher in the first place? What was it when I was a kid that I really wanted to be when I grew up? What was it that I really wanted to do? I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to be the catalyst for change in future generations and make this world a better place. I wanted to light up the path for my students and set them up for success, even if it was small. I never wanted any child to go home thinking that no one believed in them. And I gave every single morsel of my being to those students. I was a teacher, but I was nothing else. I had the job, but I was showing up to it without my soul. I finally decided to leave teaching at the end of 2019 after the stress started taking a physical toll on me. Breaking the news to my students was one of the hardest things that I have ever had to do. It was gut-wrenching. There were a lot of tears. But when I explained to the kids that it was something that I had to do for myself, somehow those young little kids understood. And as soon as I walked out of the school, I instantly felt weight lift off of my shoulders, and I felt like I could breathe again. I started a new job with Girl Scouts and noticed that I was treated much differently for the better. I was regarded as a whole person and not just the position that I filled. I could log off from work, turn to my husband and say, "What do you want to do tonight?" on any given day of the week. I still had to work some evenings, but I could swap those hours for time off during the day. Not a bad trade. I was adventurous and spontaneous again, and I wanted to soak up anything and everything in life for the first time in years. After about 2 years with Girl Scouts, I left to move back to Connecticut. My husband and I wanted to settle away from the city life. So I took a leap in a totally new field and joined the Resolute team. I felt a little out of place with my background in education, but so many of you accepted me as a colleague anyway. Yet something was looming, something heavier. Nearly 50% of teachers quit in the first 5 years, according to the US Department of Education. I had become that statistic. That was me. I quit, left the fields, made a career change, took off in a different direction, any way I could spin it to make it sound better in my mind, but it didn't. I felt like the narrative of my quitting didn't belong anywhere else in my life. My mom and dad did not raise a quitter. They raised a strong, dedicated woman who could withstand adversity and overcome anything that stood in her way. But my quitting contradicted that, so I couldn't possibly be that woman. When faced with adversity, I had backed down. And I failed. Resolute Day is a time where we get to come together as one powerful group and make connections with team members that we don't get to interact with on a day-to-day basis, and for that, I'm forever grateful. But even more importantly, this day gives us a chance to connect with ourselves. We spent the first Resolute Day in 2022 with Todd Williams, and those of you who were there remember his beautiful stories about the human condition and connecting with others, all with profound messages tied to them. He delivered 3 messages that day in particular that I heard loud and clear. Todd had told us that adversity doesn't take away your identity, it shifts it. Wait a minute. Maybe I didn't lose my identity when I left teaching. Maybe I just needed to reframe my perspective. Then Todd said, the terrain changes, not your identity. The terrain changes, so not who I am. Okay. I mean, nothing about me was different other than the position I filled in the field that I was in. I still love to do the same things. I didn't fail in the face of adversity. I changed the narrative. I chose to reject adversity so that it couldn't consume me anymore. I was the catalyst for change in my own life in order to find balance and be brought back to the things that I truly wanted. I left teaching as an act of courage and self-advocacy. The final message that I took from Todd was this: growth is a byproduct of adversity. I have recited this mantra every single time I have encountered an obstacle ever since that day. And I will never feel stuck again, because adversity provides the opportunity for a new skill set. And now, with the clarity of this reinvention, I know I can overcome any challenge, even if I choose to walk away from it, because that's a skill in itself, knowing when enough is enough and it's time to walk away. This was the reinvention that I needed in my new terrain. And I decided to revisit my mapped out plan from so many years ago with a renewed sense of self. I have a career, and it provides me with the opportunities to make an impact, have a sense of purpose, and live a balanced life. I have a beautiful little home that my husband and I have worked so hard to make our own. And on September 30th, 2023, we welcomed our son Anthony into this world, and I got to become the mom that I always wanted to be. This was the life that I wanted. And I'm often asked, do you miss it? And yeah, I miss the kids. I miss the act of teaching, of standing in front of a group with the intention of delivering a message and inspiring one to learn. But do I miss being a teacher? Not one bit. These days, I show up to work ready to take on each day with dedication and integrity in order to serve my team and our patients. And at the same time, I soak up life outside of work. Each night, I get to go home to my son and my husband without the distractions or worries that previously took up my mental space. I'm captivated by the silly games that we play and the struggles that we resolve together and the stories that we share. Even though Anthony's is still mostly babble, I'm trying to figure out what he's saying, and his favorite words are Tate, Tot, Cookie, and Elmo. And I get to simply enjoy their company without feeling the pull of other obligations. Each moment that we spend together is accumulating the loving memories that will last a lifetime. And I can't think of anything more fulfilling than that. There are so many roles that we occupy in our lives, so many dimensions that make up who we are. When I was a kid, I was so focused on becoming something when I grew up that I overlooked the importance and beauty of becoming someone. What we are, our roles, our position, they only matter when they're backed up by our character. We can fill any position. How we show up to that position is the key to making an impact. There's more than one trail to climb up a mountain, and there's more than one recipe to make the same meal. What matters is who is making it. I started today by asking you what you wanted to be when you grew up. And now that we're grown and life has taken us in so many different directions that we may not have anticipated, I ask you this more important question, more valuable question. Who do you want to be? And if you're not there yet, it's okay. Consider reinventing yourself as you navigate the terrain that you're in. It may turn out to be the best version of you. Thank you.